Hello everyone, today is 1st of April, now it's 15 to 10 in the morning Moscow time. I'm Levan Gudadze and this is my first update for the day in which I will share all the main news that are making headlines in Russian media outlets and Russian language pages on different internet platforms. There are quite a few very significant developments and news that I'd like to share with you for this moment, and I will start with short summary of the situation on Ukrainian battlefield. According to reports from Russian media and Russian military channels, there was no crucial changes on any of the sectors of the front line, although there are some developments in Zaporozhye, South Donetsk, and Donetsk sectors of the front line. In Zaporozhye sector, for example, according to several channels, Russian armed forces conducted successful local-scale offensive operations northwestern side of Verbovo settlement and establish control over their additional strongholds, strong points of Kyiv regime forces, and basically by doing so, situation for Ukrainian contingent in Rabotina and the surrounding areas, mainly on the northern side of Rabotina, become even more difficult. And at this point, probably it's a matter of days, maybe towards end of this week, Ukrainian units will finally be forced to withdraw from northern part of Rabotina and go back towards Malaya Takmachka, Novodanilovka areas and try to establish new defense lines. There, when it comes to South Donetsk sector of the front line, according to some channels, by the way, Russian armed forces managed to establish control over the Novomikhailivka. This information came as a surprise to me personally, because battles for this settlement are continuing for quite a number of weeks now, and even a few days ago there was not really clear indicators that Ukrainian units were planning to withdraw from Novomikhailivka. But yet again, some channels reported that Russian forces managed to establish full control over this settlement. Let's wait for additional news. I'm not quite sure that this information is correct, at least for now. Let's see what additional information we will have during the day. Also, Russian forces continue to increase pressure on Ukrainian units or military personnel of Zelensky's regime, Kyiv regime, in Ugledar direction and also on Vremevsky salient. In Ugledar direction, it's Russian Air Force that increasing airstrikes on points of concentration of Kyiv regime forces, and in Vremevsky salient area, to be more precise, in Urozhaina, Staromayorskaya directions, Russian armed forces, according to several channels, are conducting local-scale offensive operations and increasing artillery fire, which may be indicator that some more or less large scale in terms of this sector Russian offensive is in preparation to establish control over the Vremevsky salient. When it comes to Donetsk sector of the front line, main hotspot is of course Krasnogorovka. Russian forces almost established full control over the Georgievka. Ukrainian units are in extremely difficult situation in Georgievka area. And when it comes to Krasnogorovka, despite many attempts of Kyiv regime to force Russian units out of this settlement, they are failing. And the Russian side is maintaining foothold in Krasnogorovka. And I remind you, dear friends, that this settlement is last strong point, last well-prepared defensive point of Kyiv regime on the southern flank of Donetsk sector. Kyiv regime was fortifying this area since 2014. And by losing this stronghold, of course, Ukrainian units will find it extremely difficult to stabilize defense lines on the western side of Krasnogorovka and Georgievka. And also Avdiivka direction, Pervomayskaya settlement, which is also, according to some reports, under full Russian control now, and Ukrainian units withdraw from this settlement. maybe today Russian Defense Ministry will confirm this information, but for now it's a similar situation with Novomykhailovka. Without photo or video confirmation, it's difficult to tell what is going on, but most likely Pervomaiskaya is definitely under full Russian control. But about Novomykhailovka, I have some doubts. Maybe military channels were mistaken. It is possible. I don't know. Let's see. Let's see what additional information we will have during the day. And of course, I will report about it on my Telegram channel and in the next updates. And well, this is it when it comes to short summary. Russian forces are, of course, increasing pressure on Ukrainian units on northern flank of Donetsk sector, in Chisov Yar direction, also in Seversk direction, on Krasny Liman and Kupiansk directions also, namely in Seversk direction, in direction of settlements of Terny and Sinkovka. This is Kupiansk sector, of course, but I did not see any reports on changes on line of contact. If you are interested in more detailed information about developments on line of contact, of course, I recommend military channels. They are providing great volume of information on these local scale skirmishes, artillery duels, drone wars, and so on. And if you are not familiar with military channels, under this video in description box, I have recommendation list of the channels that I follow, and you can see there are links to several military channels also, including Military Summary, by the way, one of the biggest channel, military channel that there is. That's been said, let's continue with some additional news. And Vzglyad newspaper is reporting that Moscow demanded from Kyiv arrest of a number of high-ranking officials in Ukraine and number of individuals, let's say this way, that according to Russian security services are involved in terrorist activity on Russian soil. And among this list of the names, there is a current head of SBU, Ukraine security, head of Ukraine Security Service, Vasily Malyuk. I guess in this list probably is Kirill Budanov, also head of Ukraine's main intelligence directorate, and number of other high-ranking officials in Ukraine's security services or secret services. I guess Kyiv regime will ignore, most likely, of course, Kyiv regime will ignore this demand from Moscow. But point for Russian side to make this demand probably was to lay down legal foundation to conduct more direct actions against individuals that are located in Ukraine and are participating in terrorist activity on Russian soil. And for example, dear friends, I remind you that just about a week ago, head of Ukraine's SBU, Vasily Malyuk, during the interview openly basically openly talk about terrorist activities on Russian soil. And he did not say that SBU was involved, but he provided such a precise information about explosives that was used, about even weight of explosives that was used, or type of explosives and other military equipment, that basically that was at least indirect confirmation of SBU's involvement. Same can be said about statements of Kirill Budanov, he head of main intelligence directorate of Ukraine's defense ministry. He also practically openly admitted involvement in terrorist attacks on Russian soil. And Moscow definitely has every right to take action against these individuals. First step is, of course, to make a formal claim, inform Kyiv regime that these individuals are involved in terrorist activity and action should be taken. And once Kyiv regime will ignore Moscow's demand, then of course Russian security services, Russian militaries will have every right to take action and neutralize these terrorists. And that's exactly what's gonna happen. This is the last warning from Moscow in regards to terrorists that are operating against Russia from Kyiv-controlled territory. And some actions, by the way, already are taken. RIA Novosti is reporting that as a result of precise strike of Russian forces in Kherson region, point of location of SBU officers was destroyed. No precise information about number of officers of SBU that were neutralized during these strikes, but Russian side definitely is already taking steps to minimize risks of terrorist attacks on Russian soil from terrorist organizations that are operating from Ukraine, including Ukraine's SBU, by the way, which is clearly a terrorist organization, and even if it's not yet designated as such, but probably will be, because head of Russian FSB, Russian Federal Security Service, a few days ago shared his opinion with the public about SBU and said that that organization, it is time that organization should to be designated as a terrorist organization, and that's probably what is going to happen. RIA Novosti is also reporting that Russian air forces conducted precise strikes on energy facilities of Kyiv regime that is used, of course, energy facilities are playing crucial role for Kyiv regime to deploy Ukrainian military to deploy military personnel or equipment on the line of contact, to produce some weapons in whatever is remaining from Ukraine's military industrial complex. Therefore, Russian side sees energy facilities as a legitimate target, and hardly anyone will argue with this. And well, during these strikes, by the way, precise strikes, Russian armed forces neutralized not just energy facilities, but also airfield was targeted in Nikolaev region, during which 3 Ukrainian Su-25s were destroyed, and also Ukrainian S-300 air defense system was destroyed. I shared on my Telegram yesterday video of destruction of that S-300 battery. You can check that video if you want to. And when it comes to destruction of 3 Su-25 attack planes of Kyiv regime in Nikolaev region, let me show you area where that happened. So this is Nikolaev region, by the way, and this is airfield which was targeted by Russian forces with guided weapon systems, and on this airfield these 3 Su-25s were neutralized. Many members of our community time to time are asking me how many planes Kyiv regime has left, and well, unfortunately I don't know. But definitely not too many, maybe a dozen or 2 dozen, and that's it. NATO member states did quite effective work to look for Soviet-era planes worldwide, Soviet-era Su-24s, Su-25s, MiG-29s, Su-27s, and whenever they find those planes, they were forcing local governments to transfer those planes to Kyiv regime or to one of the NATO member states, and then these planes were delivered to Kyiv regime. But I guess at this point of the special military operation, number of planes in hands of Kyiv regime is closing into zero. As I said, maybe a dozen of planes left in disposal of Zelensky and his criminal associates. Maybe 2 dozens, but and they will be destroyed, by the way. Give it a month or two and probably Kyiv regime will be left without any planes. Of course, if NATO will not start deliveries of F-16s, for example, which might happen any time, because according to Western media outlets, first bunch of F-16s will be delivered to Kyiv regime before end of spring. So it's April now. So in next 2 months probably we will see arrival of US-made F-16 fighter bombers on the line of in Ukrainian skies. And also, by the way, several media outlets, Western media outlets, reported that Sweden is considering to transfer to Kyiv regime Swedish Gripen fighters. Although I have some doubts about this information. I don't think Sweden will deliver weapons to Kyiv regime, but anything is possible, by the way. I remind you that several months ago there was also informations that were circulating on internet that France was considering to deliver to Kyiv regime Mirage 2000 fighters also, but those talks did not go any further than just talks, at least for now, and we did not see any Mirage planes being delivered to Kyiv regime. Let's continue, and this is exactly the news. RT is also reported about destruction of these 3 Ukrainian Su-25 attack planes in Nikolaev region. Then TASS news agencies report that Mayor of Ukraine, Vitaly Klitschko, made a statement that is in contradiction with the statements of Zelensky, who recently, during his interview, one of the interviews, said that Kyiv no longer demands, as a precondition for talks with the Russian side, reestablishing Kyiv's control over the borders from 1991. A strange statement from Kyiv regime, because Zelensky was not as precise in these statements. He was saying that, well, if Kyiv regime will establish control over the borders that they control for 2022, that may be good enough reason for Kyiv to start negotiations, which is also delusional statement to make, because since 2022 things change and reality on the ground changed significantly, very significantly, and now Zaporozhye, Kherson, Donetsk People's Republic and Lugansk People's Republic are parts of Russian Federation. So Zelensky's statement about 2022 borders is also out of touch with reality. But in any case, Klitschko made a statement, mayor of Kyiv, that Ukraine will, you know what? Let me translate to be more precise, because so the mayor of Kyiv, Vitaly Klitschko, opposed the idea of freezing the conflict in Ukraine and territorial concessions. So according to him, Ukraine will never agree to lose control over any territories. Also delusional statement, by the way, from mayor of Kyiv, which is not really surprising. This is this individual known to be out of touch with reality. He was a great sportsman, by the way, great boxer, but as a politician and intellectual, he's definitely somewhere around zero. And I would not pay attention to his statements if he was acting on his own, but he is now associated with the Zaluzhny's camp. And therefore, of course, it is possible that it's Zaluzhny and his inner circle that are using Klitschko to air some statements that they want to be out there in the media, in the public. That's the only reason why I'm paying any attention to Klitschko's statement. And of course, Zaluzhny is a former head of Ukraine's general staff, and the most likely individual that is seen by London and Washington as a person who will replace Zelensky in presidential office. And when it comes to Zelensky and his presidency, by the way, according to Ukrainian laws, yesterday there should be presidential elections in Ukraine on 31st of March. But as we all know, there was no elections, and therefore inside the Ukraine now, most likely we will see some tendencies when opposition groups, mainly Zaluzhny's camp, will start calling Zelensky illegitimate president, because that's what he really is at this point. Illegitimate because Ukrainian people did not vote for him to stay in power after 31st of March without another presidential elections. But anyway, let's continue. TASS news agency is reporting. And by the way, when it comes to presidential elections in Ukraine, you know my take on the situation. I said that probably Washington and London will allow Zelensky to prolong martial law for another 3 months, but that's it. After that, probably Washington and London will demand presidential election to take place, and they will try to replace Zelensky with Zaluzhny this way, or if there will be no presidential elections, if Zelensky will disagree on that to conduct presidential elections, then probably military coup will take place in Ukraine, and after that presidential elections will be held, and that's how eventually Zelensky will be replaced. Zelensky is a loose cannon anyway. It's only a matter of several months now, and he's most likely gone. TASS news agency is reporting that the head of Finnish foreign ministry basically made a statement and somewhat supported Macron, president of France, in his statements or ambitions to deploy NATO troops into Ukraine to deter Russia's advances. Elina Valtonen, head of Finnish diplomacy, did not say that NATO troops should be deployed right now into Ukraine, but she was, she was making statements that it is possible. Nothing should be excluded when in EU's or NATO's possible responses. And unsurprisingly, most active supporters of Macron are Poland, by the way, extremely that is led by extreme Russophobes, Baltic states that are led by extreme Russophobes, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, and Finland, by the way, that are led by extreme Russophobes. Although Finnish society, by the way, I believe are very, very far away to being Russophobe. I don't think they have any hate towards us. But government of Finland, that's a whole different story. And this statement from Elina Valtonen definitely proves that. Why they are trying on daily basis to further escalate with Moscow and demonstrate how hateful they are, this leadership of Finland, I have no idea, but that's what they do. Anyway, let's continue. Interfax is reporting that, and by the way, of course, eventually NATO troops will be deployed in Ukraine. I have no doubts about that. I was saying about deployment of NATO troops in Ukraine many months before Macron even said anything about this. And but point is that in my reading of the big picture, NATO troops will be deployed in western regions of Ukraine, because of course this failed state, Ukraine, will be divided between Russia and the NATO member states once this conflict will end. And the western regions of Ukraine will be controlled by NATO and the rest of the Ukraine by Russian side. That's my reading of big picture, although anything is possible. We are living in very strange times. Anything is possible, and maybe NATO troops will be deployed not just in western Ukraine, but also towards Kyiv, towards Chernihiv, Sumy or Odessa regions. And in that case, of course, things may escalate very quickly, and we might see even direct confrontation between Russia and NATO, although still, by the way, I am quite skeptical that NATO troops will leave western regions of Ukraine and will try to get engaged in direct conflict with Russia. Most likely they will stay in western Ukraine, and that will allow both sides, NATO and Russia, to avoid at least large-scale direct confrontations, although some local-scale skirmishes still might happen. But local-scale skirmish is not going to provoke nuclear exchange between the sides, so difference is huge, of course. Anyway, let's continue. Interfax is reporting that President of Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, signed a decree on subscription on spring conscription on spring conscription, and 150,000 people will join Russian army this spring. Of course, Russian army is mixed professional and conscription, based on professional army contractors, and also there is conscription, and every season conscription is conducted since the Soviet era, by the way. This is nothing new. And 150,000 people will join Russian army this autumn. One should notice that conscripts are not participating in special military operation. Conscripts are not participating in special military operation. They are based deep inside Russian territory. And when this information became available yesterday, several Western propaganda outlets start publishing some articles and talking about new wave of mobilization in Russia. Those people seems like have no idea what is mobilization and what is just a regular seasonal conscription. But unfortunately, I mean, society, significant number of part of societies in the West are believing anything they see in these propaganda outlets in the West, and probably they will think now that Russia is conducting some mobilization, when in reality this is not a mobilization. This is just regular seasonal conscription that happens for decades and decades now, since the Soviet Union, by the way, as I said. So nothing new here, absolutely. And as I said, conscripts are not participating in special military operations. Vzglyad newspaper is reporting that, well, interestingly, Germany's MBDA company, defense industry company, stopped production of Taurus long-range cruise missiles because of lack of demand on this weapon system, which is quite interesting, especially nowadays when so much talk is in the Western media and among Western politicians about these Taurus long-range cruise missiles. As we all know, London, Paris, some other capitals among NATO member states are demanding from Germany these Taurus long-range missiles to be delivered to Kyiv regime. Berlin, at least formally, refusing to do so. Although several experts were sharing information with us, with the public, that according to their information, Taurus missiles already been delivered to Kyiv regime. Hard to tell, really, but in any case, seems like production of this weapon system is halted. And according to information that is available from open sources, Germany, for this point, has about 600 Taurus cruise missiles, among which only 300 is operational. Another half is out of order for whatever reason. And well, before I continue, let me notice, if I may, that this channel, this small media project of mine with several channels, several programs, is fully subscriber funded. And I will be immensely grateful if you will consider to support my work and this small project of mine, media project of mine, with small donations through PayPal, Boosty. This is Boosty, by the way, most popular donation platform among Russian creators, here in Russia. And of course, you can subscribe also on my Patreon page, on which I have some extra content on regular basis. And for example, this Saturday I uploaded first episode of non-political program, Streets of Moscow, and that program is exactly as its name says. It's about Moscow streets. In next episodes, first episode was about Pyatnitskaya Street, quite nice streets in central part of Moscow, and I will continue this way. And of course, members of our community on Patreon can suggest areas that they would like to see in next episodes, and of course I will try to make videos there also. So I'm trying to make Patreon pages as interesting as possible. So yes, if you have, and if you can, and if you want to, you can support, as I said, through PayPal, Boosty, or by subscribing to my Patreon page. And of course, many thanks to all the members of our community who already supported and continues to support. Thank you very much. That's been said, let's continue with additional news. And RT is reporting that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Sunday reiterated he is resolved to launch a new offensive in the southern Gaza, targeting the city of Rafah. The looming operation is absolutely needed to achieve a victory over Hamas, he insisted. And as we all know, Israeli government is encountering significant opposition worldwide when it comes to IDF's military operation in the southern Gaza. After all, initially it was Netanyahu's government and the IDF that calling for people in northern Gaza to move towards south to avoid military areas of military operations. And now, very same Netanyahu is saying that we're gonna go to the southern Gaza Strip also, and then what locals and refugees should do in that case, where they should go. And many experts, many governments worldwide are afraid that in case of military operation in southern Gaza, in Rafah direction, where according to some reports 1.5 million people are concentrated right now, may cause another tens of thousands of civilian deaths, and therefore everyone is opposing Israel's government, but seems like Netanyahu don't really cares about it much. And in upcoming days, large-scale military operation may begin in southern Gaza also. RIA Novosti is reporting that according to France press, number of casualties on behalf of IDF, Israeli Defense Forces, reached 600 since the beginning of the escalation between Israel and Palestine. Huge number, especially for Israeli forces, probably highest casualty number since the Israeli-Egypt war. And one more reason why Netanyahu's government should think about de-escalating, not escalating further. TASS news agency is also reporting that President of Turkey, Erdogan, recognized defeat of his party in local elections that took place yesterday on 31st of March. Interesting developments are taking place in Turkey. Erdogan's party is losing popularity, and Erdogan himself, although at least next several years Erdogan will continue probably to lead Turkey, despite the demands or calls from Turkish opposition to conduct yearly parliamentary elections. Let's see how things develop. Under leadership of Erdogan, Turkey definitely become a powerhouse on a regional and even on a global scale in terms of geopolitics. Although it was exactly during the Erdogan's presidency leadership that Turkey started experiencing immense difficulties in economy, because this involvement in geopolitical games came with the cost for Turkey, and the Turkish economy is in very difficult situation right now. And of course, this difficulties in economy generates additional support for the opposition parties in Turkey. But anyway, let's see how things develop in Turkey. It is somewhat indicator for changes to come in Turkey that opposition parties achieve a significant victory in local elections. RT is reporting that Moscow condemns Paris mayor's hostile stance on Olympic athletes. Maria Zakharova commented on statements of mayor of Paris, Hidalgo, Anne Hidalgo, when she said that Russian and Belarusian sportsmen or athletes are not welcome in Paris. Many other officials also reacted, and well, it's sad. It's just sad. It don't even makes you angry no more when you see this crazy level of Russophobia in the West. I mean, you just feel sorry for entire world, basically, that we are living in times when high-ranking officials are allowing themselves to make extremely xenophobic or Nazi statements, and they are not sacked straight away after that. It's sad. It's sad, really, because I'm no longer surprised to hear any Russophobic statements from the collective West, for example. But it does makes me sad, by the way, that degradation of political class in the West is reaching some probably unprecedented levels. RIA Novosti is reporting that, well, Armenia, by the way, Armenia is in headlines once again in Russian media, and Foreign Minister of Armenia, Ararat Mirzoyan, made a statement with the TN TV station that the US and Europe are strategic main partners, by the way, strategic and main partners for Armenia. Quite interesting statements. Seems like Yerevan no longer sees Russia as a main partner, not surprisingly, because we all know that Pashinyan and his government, they are assets of CIA, by the way. And, well, unfortunately, deterioration of relationships between Moscow and Yerevan seems unstoppable at this point, which is also sad, but what you gonna do about it? Moscow definitely tries its best to maintain good working relationships with Armenia and the current leadership of Pashinyan, but it's becoming, I mean, more and more difficult. And one thing is statements, and other thing is steps on the ground that Pashinyan's government is taking. For example, soon Russian border guards will not be allowed will be removed from Yerevan's international airport, and it will take, I don't know, maybe several months, maybe a year, and eventually I'm quite sure Pashinyan's government will demand withdrawal of Russian border guards and withdrawal of Russian military base from Armenia. It will definitely happen, and that's why, in my personal opinion, if it was up to me, I will recommend Moscow to withdraw Russian militaries and border guards from Armenia right now, and not to give Pashinyan and his associates this additional opportunity to conduct some media operation and then brag about that how tough they are, that they force Russian military presence in Armenia out of this country. They will do this. It's only a matter of time, and they will definitely demand Russian base to be withdrawn. And of course, Russian forces will withdraw from Armenia. At this point, I don't think for Russia it has any strategic meaning to maintain its military base in Armenia or presence. And I believe that's why just a week or two ago, Russian Foreign Ministry quite directly stated that Russian military base is military presence in Armenia is one of the major guarantees of sovereignty of this state. Although it seems like Pashinyan don't really cares about Armenian sovereignty. So what you gonna do? I mean, you cannot be friend to someone that don't want to be your friend. That's it. And Pashinyan and his people, they clearly don't want to be friendly with Russia. End of story. And RIA Novosti is reporting that Yerevan, very same Pashinyan and his government, are denying claims from Baku that they are concentrating armed forces on the borderline with Azerbaijan, to be more precise, Nakhichevan autonomous region of Azerbaijan, first of all. And there was clearly some movements of military equipment and manpower in Armenia towards borderlines, although Russian military channels analyze their development in Armenia, and they come up with conclusion that this is just a regular rotation of the forces, nothing extraordinary. But Baku had a different reading of the situation, and they demanded de-escalation on the borderline, but Armenia is denying that they are increasing presence of their troops on the border. RIA Novosti is reporting that from today, from 1st of April, social pensions in Russia will rise 7.5%, which is higher than current inflation in Russia, so that pensioners will have a better покупательная способность. How should I say? Purchase power. Just a sec, dear friends. My English is not as good as I would like, so time to time I need to use a translator. Purchasing power, yes. With this increase of 7.5%, of course, pensioners will have a little more purchasing power. Also, RIA Novosti is reporting that it's become known how much money Russia received from EU on the gas sales, and you know what, I'm gonna translate this also. How long is this update, man? It's already 41 minutes. Wow. Okay, for almost 2 years since the beginning of the presidential decree on the sales of the natural gas to unfriendly countries for rubles, Russia has received at least 2.3 trillion rubles from supplies to unfriendly European countries, according to RIA Novosti's calculations based on data from national Eurostat and the UN Comtrade platform. Thus, from April 2022 to January of this year, there are no later data available now. Moscow received 31 billion euros from the EU for pipeline gas supplies, or 2.2 trillion rubles. Another approximately 920 million euros, or 66 billion rubles of gas was sold to other unfriendly countries in Europe. So despite the statements, by the way, in collective West that they get rid of Russian energy entirely, just for pipeline gas they paid 30 from 2022 to January, to this January, they already paid 31 billion euros, and 32 billion euros, let's say, and this is just for pipeline gas. And of course, Russia is one of the major supplier of LNG for a number of European economies, including France, by the way, Belgium, Spain, and they are paying another billions and billions of euros for Russian gas. Although, of course, if they were receiving pipeline gas, they will pay significantly less, because LNG costs much more, of course. And of course, eventually, these differences in prices will have its influence on prices in Europe, not just on energy prices, but on prices of everything, because energy is influencing every single sector that there is. And finally, dear friends, I will share with you this information that in Russia, second plane took its first plane, second Il-114-300 turboprop plane took make his first flight since development of new generation engines, turboprop engines in Russia. This project of Il-114-300 received second life, and Russian aero industry now is actively working on development of this plane. And I guess in several years' time, this medium range plane will will go in mass production, and I hope it will achieve success on internal and foreign markets. It might happen, it might well happen, and this plane, by the way, which is medium range plane, will be able to carry 300 passengers. Good development. After all, there is only several countries in this world that are able to produce military or civilian aircrafts, and Russia is definitely leading country in this regard, leading country in terms of military airplanes, and one of the countries that are able to produce civilian aircrafts also, although of course Russian aero industry is far away to be seen as a major competitor to Boeing and Airbus for this moment. I mean, it's just obvious that Boeing and Airbus are in different league, but give it a 10, 15, 20 years and who knows, maybe Russian aero industry will manage to compete even with these monopolists, basically, that Boeing and Airbus are. And of course, by the way, this information is an additional indicator about situation in Russian economy, because economy in tatters, as Ursula likes to say, would not be able to produce anything really, especially high tech that planes are, isn't it? So yes, Russian economy is doing quite okay, especially if you take in account all that pressure from the collective West and like 18 or 19,000 sanctions that was imposed on Russia. And I remind you, dear friends, that in 2023 Russian economy grew 3.6%, and Russia was in top 5 countries in G20 with economical growth. So also quite an indicator. And this is it for now. Quite a long update, but hopefully you will find this video interesting and informative. And if so, please click that like button and leave some commentary. More likes and comments, I think, will definitely help to deal with the algorithms on both platforms, Rumble and YouTube, and will help me to reach wider audience. And for very same reason, if you can, please share links to my videos or my channels with your friends on any of the platforms that you are actively using. And well, finally, if you think this small media project of mine is interesting and useful and deserves to exist, please consider to support my work with small donations through PayPal, Boosty, or by subscribing to my Patreon page. All the links are under this video in description box and in the pinned comment. This is it for now. Have a great day and take care.